You've already heard the name, but you haven't heard what it actually sounds like at 68,000 people deep. Lumen Field doesn't just host loud matches, it manufactures noise. The steel and concrete bowl was built, deliberately, structurally, to trap decibels and bounce them back at you. In 2013, it broke the Guinness World Record for crowd noise at an outdoor stadium. 137.6 decibels, louder than a jet engine at close range. That record has since been broken by other stadiums, but the architecture hasn't changed. And in the summer of 2026, 6 World Cup matches will be played inside it. 6 matches. Think about what that means for everything around this stadium. Seattle doesn't greet you the way Miami does. There's no blast of heat, no explosion of color when you step outside the terminal. Seattle is gray, green, and stubborn about it. The cloud cover feels structural, like it was approved by the city planning department. The rain is not dramatic. It's ambient, the kind that soaks you without ever announcing itself, and by the time you notice, your jacket is already done. SeaTac International Airport sits 14 miles south of downtown. In normal traffic, that's 30 to 45 minutes. On a World Cup match day with 70,000 people converging on the same corridor, that number means nothing. I watched someone on a forum confidently book a cab for 90 minutes before kickoff on a Copa America test event and missed the first half entirely. Don't be that person. Here's what actually matters. Link Light Rail. The same train that runs from the airport to downtown Seattle also stops at Stadium Station, the last stop before Pioneer Square, about 3 minutes on foot from Lumen Field's main gates. One line, no transfers. Trains run every 8 minutes at peak times, and Sound Transit has already expanded capacity in anticipation of major events. If you're arriving from SeaTac, this is not a polite suggestion. It's the only route that makes sense. Taxis, rideshares, and private cars will be sitting still on I-5 while you're already past security and looking for your section. Train fare from the airport to Stadium Station, under $4, cheaper than the parking garage charges just to enter. Park your ego somewhere, leave your car there too. The 2026 FIFA World Cup has assigned Seattle 6 group stage matches. None involve the host nation, which means you're dealing with international fan bases. Some who've been planning this trip for 2 years, some who bought tickets last week and are winging it completely. The gate queues will tell you immediately which is which. Lumen Field has 4 main entry gates. Gates A and B absorb the bulk of traffic from the north approach. Gate D handles the south corridor from the light rail station. Security at FIFA events follows elevated protocols. Wand screenings, bag checks, a banned item list that mirrors airport-level scrutiny. If you're carrying a bag that requires a second look, you're the reason the queue behind you is now 400 people long. Carry less. Bring clear bags if the tournament guidelines recommend them. Add 45 minutes to whatever arrival time you think is reasonable. Then add another 15 because the person in front of you forgot they had a pocket knife. The stadium sits in the SoDo district, south of downtown Seattle. This area is not a tourist hub. It's industrial, functional, and honest about what it is. There are no boutique hotels within 2 blocks, no trendy brunch spots with outdoor heaters and chalkboard menus. There's a parking lot, a light rail station, and a bridge. That's genuinely useful because it means the crowd disperses quickly after the match once you cross the I-90 overpass heading north into Pioneer Square or First Hill. If you're staying in downtown Seattle, Capitol Hill, or South Lake Union, you're within 20 minutes of the stadium on foot or by rail. Belltown is fine. Queen Anne works if you don't mind a hill that will genuinely humble you after 90 minutes of standing. Lumen Field opened in 2002 for the Seattle Seahawks. It seats 72,000 for NFL games. FIFA configurations usually compress that slightly. Expect around 68,000 to 70,000 certified capacity for World Cup format. The design has one specific and somewhat brutal feature. The roof is partial and angled, and it does not protect every seat from rain. The lower bowl is largely exposed. The upper tier gets some overhang. Before you decide what to pack, check which section you're in, because sitting in the lower bowl in a Seattle drizzle during an 85th minute penalty situation is either thrilling or miserable depending entirely on whether you brought a jacket. I've done both. Bring the jacket. What that roof does, and this is the part that matters, is redirect sound. It acts as an acoustic amplifier, trapping crowd noise and throwing it back down at field level. Players have called it disorienting. Referees have reportedly struggled to communicate. The crowd noise inside this building is not atmosphere. It's a presence you feel in your chest. If you've never been to a match where the noise becomes physical, Lumen Field will introduce you to the concept in the first minute of a good contest. Seattle in summer sits in the low to mid-60s Fahrenheit, roughly 15 to 18 Celsius. July evenings drop. Rain probability is lower than winter, but not zero. This is still the Pacific Northwest, and the weather doesn't take days off for international football. Dress in layers. You'll appreciate this around the hour mark when the temperature has dropped 3 degrees and the match is level. Face value ticket prices for 2026 World Cup group stage matches start around $100 for the upper bowl and climb past $500 for lower-level sideline positions. On the secondary market, for matches with high-demand international fan bases, those numbers will go higher. Budget with that in mind, not the FIFA listed price. Section 100 level gives you the closest views to the pitch, with good sight lines on the east side. Sections 120 through 132 run along the west sideline and are the most sought-after spots for group stage matches. Centrally positioned, good elevation, minimal post obstruction. The north end zone puts you directly behind a goal, which can be tremendous for certain types of matches, and oddly lonely for others, depending on which half the action favors. Worth knowing before you click confirm. The south end zone is where the traveling supporter groups will concentrate. Flags, drums, call and response chants, the occasional smoke flare if stewards are having a forgiving day. If noise and organized chaos are what you came for, orient yourself there. If you want to actually follow the tactical shape of the match, maybe don't. Food inside Lumen Field is expensive. Expect $15 hot dogs, $14 beers, and a general sense that the concession pricing was calibrated for NFL playoff games. Eat before you go in. Pike Place Market is 15 minutes north of the stadium and closes in the early evening. If your match is a 6 p.m. kickoff, you have a reasonable window to eat well and still make gates. I spent $67 on 2 beers and a pretzel at a Seahawks game once, and I'm still not over it. For hotels, Pioneer Square is close, walkable, and historic in a slightly gritty way that feels appropriate for a football trip. The financial district has chain hotels with reliable availability. South Lake Union is newer, more expensive, and filled with tech company employees who will look confused when you show up in a national team jersey. Book early regardless. Seattle's accommodation market during the group stage will compress fast, and the options that are left at the last minute will charge accordingly. Lumen Field is not a neutral venue. It's not built for aesthetics or corporate hospitality. It's built for pressure. Acoustic, atmospheric, structural. The sound, the industrial setting, the rain that arrives without warning and leaves without apology. They accumulate into something that doesn't feel like a tourist experience. It feels like being tested by a city that has decided it doesn't need to impress you. 6 matches, 6 chances for this building to do what it was designed to do. The light rail runs back to the airport until after midnight, and the last northbound train from Stadium Station departs well past any final whistle. You won't be stranded. You might be soaked, but you won't be stranded. Before you finalize Seattle, though, consider the next stadium on this list, because Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City has its own record, its own crowd, and a completely different kind of noise.